Okay, let's start. As you know, this meeting is recorded and will be uploaded to public internet. With that, let's just start with some status updates. I have a couple of updates for you guys. One is the fact that I decided to move pod priority and preemption to GA in 1.14. There are a couple of reasons for this. One was the fact that our most critical components, which are critical daemon sets, rely now on this feature to be scheduled. Basically guarantee the scheduling of those daemon sets rely on pod priority and preemption. So it makes sense for this feature, by this feature I mean pod priority and preemption, to be stable and reliable and backward compatible in the future. So that was one of the main reasons. There are other reasons, including the fact that many people have asked us to move this to GA because they cannot use it unless it has enough backward compatibility guarantees. So there are some of these reasons, and we decided to. I decided to move it to GA. I also believe that the API is pretty stable. I mean, we haven't made any changes to the API, so it makes sense to move it forward. The implementation has been reasonably stable as well, I would say. We haven't had like very major big bugs. We had, of course, some bugs here and there, but there hasn't been any major one. All right, so with that, let's go to the next item. If you have questions about that, please go ahead and ask now.
So Bobby, the main reason is because of daemon set pods being scheduled by default scheduler. Is that the reason?
That was one of the reasons, basically.
I mean, the main reason is that.
I'm sorry. You said the main reason is that?
Is the main reason?
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons because now our most critical components of the system rely on this feature, basically.
Right.
If those don't work, then the whole cluster is not going to work.
Right.
So
the feature is beta, right? The scheduled daemon set pods. So do you plan to move that along to GA with this, or?
Scheduling of daemon sets, I don't know if it's, that's one of those features which is enabled. I don't know if it is beta. I don't know if there is any version associated with it, to be honest with you. Maybe I've forgotten, but anyway, if we don't do that, we need to run rescheduler, right? And otherwise, some of these critical pods may not get scheduled without having priority. So I think there are more than just one thing to change. And as a result, going back to the old behavior in a new cluster is not easy. So it's not as easy as disabling a flag and getting back to the previous feature. You need to run other components in your cluster. If you try to disable it, you need to think about how to deal with the priority and how to mark these things as critical and all that stuff. So yeah, there are more than just one thing to change.
Okay. Yeah, the other thing is we need to completely remove the critical pod annotation, right? Because that may actually cause problems to existing people who have no notion of priority if you move it to G.
So that one is already marked as deprecated, that feature.
Yeah.
But yeah, we need to eventually remove it completely, but not necessarily in this release.
Okay, if we tell that critical pod annotation is not supported going forward, we may have to remove it along with this release, right? In this release, at least in 1.14.
Why do we have to remove it?
Because we will be removing the backwards compatibility, right? And previously, what we used to do is the critical pod annotation would be converted to system critical or system node critical priority.
It was not getting converted, really. It was basically, we had done a manual change to a lot of these pods. So those that had that annotation were being, getting like critical pod, I don't know, system node critical or system cluster critical priority as well. But we had done it manually, not
I
automatically?
think I have like whatever the patch that I had in the priority admission controller some time ago that actually looks at the annotation and then adds this system cluster priority to the pod spec, if I remember correctly, the code, because
I
I
see.
think I submitted the patch for it.
Okay. Well, I don't know if there is such a thing today as well or not. Are you sure that we still have that?
I think, but let me find that out quickly.
Yeah. But anyhow, regardless, that would require a scheduler as well, right? Otherwise, nodes may not have enough resources for a critical pod.
That is right. Yeah.
So anyhow, yeah. So we don't have to remove it, to be honest with you now. I mean, if it exists and that piece of code exists, it's not going to conflict with anything.
Yeah, it's not going to conflict, but it may cause confusion. Like, why are we supporting two things? May be like causing confusion to the people, but that's fine. As long
Yeah.
as
So now we do you need to document it, and we have already. But whether we need to remove it this quarter or not, I don't know. I mean, moving priority to GA does not really change anything with that, with respect to that feature, really.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Yeah, I don't know if Mayank is here today with us. He's not. Looks like he's not. I would like to thank him for his efforts on moving informers out of, or and handlers, informer handlers as well, out of the factory. That was a big change to a lot of things in our code base. He did it very patiently and over a few weeks, and received a lot of feedback from us, and we changed our minds a few times in the middle of the process. I really appreciate his efforts. I would also thank Valerie for her efforts and supporting non-preempting priority. So Valerie, you're here. So why don't you give us an update on that? How is that work going? I know that you're working on the PR and you've faced a few different kinds of challenges along the way. And thanks a lot for your help. I wouldn't have figured out all those problems that you already solved.
You're welcome. It has been a pretty deep dive into scheduling. So I picked up an old broken ticket where it was already mostly implemented, and I've just been going through some of the test failures and compilation issues. At this point, there's some tests I need to re-add. In particular, the round trip test is failing, and I'm not sure why. So for some reason, when it goes through the system, it's getting mutated, and the non-preempting field is getting changed.
Oh, interesting. Maybe we need to have defaulting for it. We do have defaulting for it, right? For non-preempting priority.
Yeah, because it's supposed to default to preempting.
Yes, exactly. So basically, the default should be false, and I believe we have done it already in the defaults, right? I don't know why it's getting. So it's basically getting turned on, right?
I'll have to double check the test. I think that it's off in the round trip test, and then the result comes back as it's on.
Yeah, that's odd. All right. Yeah. We need. Yeah, we need to debug it, see what's going on. I'm a little surprised because Go's default for a Boolean field is false. So if nobody sets it, it should be false. They've also explicitly set it as false in our defaulting mechanism. I didn't expect this to be turned on automatically, but yeah, if you figure out, it'll be great.
I'm sorry, is this for the kube scheduler flag or is it something else, Bobby? I'm sorry, I do not have any context on this.
Oh, no, this is non-preempting priority is essentially a new field in priority class. So it basically tells the scheduler that this priority should not preempt other pods. If a pod has this priority, it shouldn't preempt other pods. So the reason for this is that some batch workloads would like to have priority so that they are scheduled ahead of other workloads which are pending and have lower priority. But if there is a high priority pending pod, they don't want this high priority pending pod to preempt already running low priority pods. So they want this pending pod to wait for those lower priority pending pods to finish, but they want this higher priority one to be scheduled first before any other one. Okay. That's why we are adding this new flag.
Oh, is this the same issue that Xiang Li has created some time ago on GitHub?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
So he was trying to do it slightly differently, but this is the effort that came out of that, and other people also asked for it.
Okay. Yeah, I remember your comment on that. Okay, I'm glad that someone else has picked up. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So let's see.
I have pasted the code of the backwards compatibility for what is the name? I forgot. Critical pod annotation.
Yeah, I saw that you also sent a link.
Yeah.
Chat window, right?
So we should not be converting it manually. It should have automatically been picked up.
So this is for. So the code that you sent is for checking that and setting the okay. So you're saying that we shouldn't change it. So I'm not sure if I got it. So you said what shouldn't we change?
No, like should we remove the critical pod annotation now completely? Like we have given a deprecation notice. Right. Should we remove it completely or not is the question.
I don't think so really. I mean, not in this release. We need to remove it eventually, but not in this release.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can leave it for now. In one more release, we can remove it. Removing some of these features is a little bit of a problem because some users rely on them, and removing it causes issues for them. So we have to probably announce it ahead of time, maybe a few months before we remove them. So maybe we can start that announcement process now to our mailing lists and whatnot, and ask people to change their configuration, and then we remove it in 1.15.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So.
By the way, that feature is still alpha. Like critical pod annotation is still alpha.
Yeah. I know that we can just remove it any day, but it was one of those weird features. It was alpha, but at the same time, all of our critical components of the system relied on it, and it was enabled.
Yeah.
All our daemon sets, critical daemon sets used it, and it was enabled by default. So it was one of those weird alpha features, and I'm worried that many other people in their clusters may also rely on it.
Yeah.
So I'm taking the note for myself. All right. Okay, so let's go over some other updates. I don't know if Harry is here today. He's not. I had a chance to take a look at the equivalence class, the new equivalence class design. Looks promising, but I have some comments on that. Hopefully we can get that working soon as an alpha feature. I don't know, in 1.14, if we can have it. Probably we won't be able to get it to 1.14, but hopefully we will have it soon. And it can improve the situation in clusters with a lot of unschedulable pods. So let's see. There are a few other things. Yeah, so I also filed an issue for a new thing that we've added, a new piece of logic that we've added to the scheduler. Recently, we changed the way the scheduler marks a pod as unschedulable. Before, if a pod was being marked unschedulable, the scheduler would only update the pod object if it didn't already have that unschedulable status. So if it had the unschedulable status and nothing in this status was changing, it would not send any updates to the API server. But we recently made a change so that the scheduler always updates the timestamp, the last attempted timestamp of the pod, every time that it tries a pod and it determines that it's unschedulable. As a result, the number of queries sent to the API server increases, especially if you have a large number of pending pods that are unschedulable, and the scheduler retries them, it will send one new update for each one of them to the API server. This can both hurt the scheduler performance because the API server updates, or generally all queries to the API server, are rate limited to 20 per second, by default, of course. And the other problem is that, of course, it raises the load on the API server to an extent. So this timestamp that we're updating is only needed for the scheduler internal state. So the scheduler uses this timestamp to sort pods in the scheduling queue, and it only uses it for pods which have the same priority. Basically, the pods which have the same priority are sorted based on their latest attempt or latest timestamp of the attempt. So we decided, I've actually filed an issue to change that timestamp to an internal state as opposed to an update to the pod object. This timestamp does not need to be announced to the whole world outside of the scheduler. This is just needed for the internal scheduler state. So we are working on changing that behavior, and we only update the timestamp in the internal state of the scheduler. Hopefully this will improve the situation, both with respect to the scheduling throughput and also the load on the API server. Okay, so let's see. There was yet another sort of change to the way that we are moving pods from unschedulable queue to the active queue. One of our contributors have sent an update to reduce the race in those situations. That seemed to be a good way of handling the racy conditions in moving pods from unschedulable queue to schedulable queue. So that is going in hopefully soon. I don't know, maybe it's already merged. Last night it was not, but maybe it will merge today. We may want to backport that. I will take a look whether we want to backport it or not. Okay, so I know that there have been a number of other things that we have been trying to achieve. Like there was an effort on resource bin packing. Sudesh was working on that. I don't know if it has gone any forward or he has not been working on it. I would like to hear updates about that. I don't know if other folks are working on any other projects, have updates for us or questions for us.
I have an update regarding the deprecation of cloud-related volume limit predicates. If you remember, like last week we had this discussion, and we should get started on deprecation in 1.14. Yeah. So last week, Michelle and Hemant and I had a meeting, and a couple of things that they have at this point of time having concerns with is the volume limits on a node and the allocatable. The SIG node does not want those fields to be part of the node structure as such. Mm-hmm. So because of that, they want to use a CRD. And with that, we need to have an additional informer, mm-hmm, which actually watches those CRDs and then makes changes to allocatable within the scheduler code. So that may actually impact the performance. So I'd like to discuss that with you. I mean, we'll have one more meeting tomorrow, and we will update the design doc soon, but it seems that is going to be a concern. I just want to give you a heads up on that. The second thing is, I know that you have worked on the extension points within the scheduler, and I believe that there are 2 extension points currently. Correct me if I'm wrong.
There are 3 now, but yeah, well, for the main logic, there are 2.
Okay.
There's one for preemption, but.
Okay, so do we have one that we could use within the schedule phase as such for the predicates?
Yeah, there is one for predicates.
Okay, yeah. So that's something that they would like to use. Do we have any example that we could look at or within the schedule?
Actually, I don't know if there is any examples. I don't think we do. Or we don't have almost any document. Well, we have a small piece of document for that, but it's, even the documentation is not very it's not adequate, I would say. So we didn't really want to promote that feature, and it could go away with the scheduling framework.
Right.
So there are some concerns about using that.
Okay, so should we?
Slow, by the way.
I'm sorry, it is slow.
It's slow, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So one of the things that they have to deliver before the deprecation is the design document. They have created a KEP for it. I'll share it with you once it has been updated, probably end of tomorrow or sometime next week. Sure. So are we okay with using those extension points, or should we tell that we'll wait for the framework and then get started with the deprecation? How should it look like?
The extension points are not good for anything that we want to use as a core component of the scheduler. Those extension points are very, very slow.
Okay.
Partly because we need to marshal and unmarshal everything that we send to those extensions. And they work over the HTTP interface. So they don't share any state with the scheduler. They cannot have access, to the cache and all these structures that the scheduler has. So they want to have a same.
I'm sorry, if you're referring to extended, Bobby, I'm not talking about that. I thought.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, I thought you have implemented some parts of the scheduler framework.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So we have a couple of okay. So yeah, maybe I got you wrong. So right. So we have a couple of those extension points, but those are not for predicates yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. I thought you were talking about extended.
Yeah, like the extended part is something that I'm aware of. Sorry for confusing you. I thought the extension points are the things that we are using.
No, at this point, I don't recommend using any of the existing extension points and the scheduling framework because that's an early development, really. We are working on, even the design is being changed. We're still working on implementation, finding the right interface and everything. So things may change. I don't recommend really using extension points at this point and in 114 at all. 115 even is kind of iffy. I don't know if we can get it to a state that we can comfortably use all those extension points as a reliable and stable implementation.
Yeah, and the other option is if we do not want to have the performance penalty, we need to use the extender that you were mentioning earlier. But it has got its own limitations, as you told.
Yeah, extenders are not a good choice, really. Those have various problems.
Yeah.
From lack of documentation to performance to maintainability issues. So no, we shouldn't go that way. But let's see what we can do. I would like to. I don't think we can really design it right now, but I would like to be involved in the discussions.
Sure. If you're free, I would ask Hemant to send out the invite for tomorrow.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I don't have that many meetings. Generally, my Fridays are open.
Okay. So I believe it's at 12 p.m. PT.
Okay. Yeah,
so,
12 should be okay. Let me see. Yeah, 12 should be okay.
Okay. I'll confirm and then I'll ask him to send that invite to you, or I'll forward that invite myself.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. All right. Is there any questions or updates?
So one thing that I've been working on is using the scheduler config map within the Kube scheduler config file. You remember we used to have a component config that we have changed to scheduler config recently. And I'm noticing an issue where the config map is, once it is loaded, it's actually having an empty value, meaning it's having the predicates as an empty slice and priorities as empty slice and all that. This is based on 112, whereas on 114 or the latest master, it is working fine. But
there was a big change in the middle. I know that I don't remember the exact details, and I'm not so sure if I understand all those details actually, because there has been a bunch of changes to component config. But I remember that there was a big change to component config, and actually it was not only limited to the scheduler, it went to many other components. Then they changed a bunch of stuff, so maybe they have fixed it, but I don't know if those changes are sort of like backportable to older versions.
Okay, I'll check if I find any existing bugs against them, and then I'll let you know. The other thing that I want to know is, say if the config map changes, would the scheduler be restarted? I remember that during the design stage, we were okay with it, and then we have changed sometime in the middle. Am I right?
Right. It doesn't. No, it does not restart itself. So the config map is not monitored. I remember at some point I wanted to
Right.
do that, but early on, like about 2 years ago, actually, I wanted to do that, but there were some concerns about like security and saying that maybe it shouldn't have, like, well, I don't know, the schedule doesn't need to have like access to all these and monitoring those, or I don't know exactly what all the details were. I already forgotten, but there were some concerns at that point.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Is there any other questions or comments? Okay, we're almost at the end of our meeting, time-wise as well. If you don't have any other questions, we can end the meeting now.
Bobby, hi. Prasad here.
Yes, 5%.
Yeah, so this is the first time I'm attending this meeting. So I would just like to introduce myself. So I'm actually new to Kubernetes development. Talking about my Kubernetes experience, I have been working with Kubernetes since a year. Okay, so I have developed several controllers for clients, and mostly I'm working on Kubernetes and Golang. Okay. And I have submitted several PRs to Kubernetes upstream. Most of them are about cleanup kinds. Okay. And thought it is a good time to get involved in a certain SIG. So I have started attending the meeting basically.
Okay.
So
Nice.
Contributions to SIG scheduling.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome to Kubernetes community. Oh, of course, you're not very new to Kubernetes community, I guess. So, but welcome to our SIG scheduling as well. And, we have a number of issues. Sometimes we file with help wanted. You might be already familiar with those. You can always look at those and pick those that are interesting for you. And sometimes from time to time, there are some projects that we try to assign to people in our SIG meetings. And sometimes at the beginning of each quarter when we decide what projects we want to pursue for the next release of Kubernetes. So if you're available, I will keep you in mind and I will try to assign some of these projects to you.
Sure.
Yeah, just to add to what Bobby told, we also have like 6 sponsored projects that you could contribute to, like Dscheduler and then SIG batch, Kube batch D, and all those.
Absolutely right. There are a number of, as we call them, incubator projects. Those are also under the SIG, but they are not in the core of Kubernetes. And those are all valuable projects that will eventually become parts of the core. Those are also great areas and are sort of like more they don't have a lot of complexity compared to maybe some of the critical components or standard components of Kubernetes. So those are more greener in a way if you want to start contributing.
Right. So if I want to get started, what should be my approach? Should I browse bugs?
Sorry. Generally there is, I don't know if there is any one approach that I can recommend to everybody, but one is to just look for those help wanted issues. Honestly, we have a lot of contributors who are looking for projects, and we don't have enough projects for everybody. Some of the projects which are simpler are also marked as with like good first projects or something like that.
Right.
I don't remember the exact label. I think it's like good first.
Good first.
Yeah. So those are great because they are smaller and give you a chance to work with the community and also get familiar with the code base. I would highly recommend to start from those, and then you can get to more complex features later.
Yeah, so I have submitted a couple of PRs about mostly of cleanup kinds.
Okay.
So I was looking for the bugs which are actually like more complicated.
Right. I don't know if we have any like major bug which requires someone to work on a project right away. But as I said, if things come up, I will definitely keep you in mind and assign some of those to you.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you very much. I will see some of you folks next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.